Well, good morning, everyone. I believe we're going to be live any second now, so hopefully you can hear me. I'll share out my presentation. I hope you've been having a good morning joining in on the sessions. Firstly, thank you to TTG for letting us join this conversation around sustainability and sustainable travel. I'm Stu, the National Sales Manager at G Adventures, and I'm going to profoundly tell you how travel can change the world in 10 minutes, believe it or not. So for anyone that doesn't know G Adventures, I'll do a quick whistle-stop introduction. So we run small group experiences all around the world and have done so for over 30 years. Average group size, you're looking at around 12 people, not more than 16, always with a local guide, and in over 100 countries, so 650 trips in 100 countries. Today, I want to focus on the sustainability side of our business, so I won't go into great detail about all the trips we run, only to mention that we've run just about 7,000 trips during the pandemic. So, on that note, touring is absolutely back, and you can see some great pictures there from around the world to some beautiful key locations such as Mexico, Uzbekistan, Peru, Petra, all around the world. But the topic of the moment is, what is sustainable travel? I wanted to put this in at the start just because there's been many different discussions over, well, probably decades now about what is sustainable travel. Is it offsetting your carbon? Is it staying local? Is it reducing over tourism? Is it doing your part to protect animals and cultures around the world? And of course, the simple answer is it's all of those and it's some of those. And I think people, agents, consumers get hung up on, doing it all. But at the end of the day, the main thing is that everyone is doing something towards, the end goal of sustainable travel. And it's really about having that positive impact. Now, we're not naive enough to think customers are going to come in and speak to agents and say, "Hi, I'd like a trip that will change the world, please." Customers are still driven by price, and even more so with the cost of living and everything I read this morning about gas and electricity prices as well. Price is always still going to be a key factor. So for us, it's really about how can we make the customer experience sustainable, even if they're not necessarily asking for it. So how do we help our clients travel sustainably at G Adventures? What we do is we build it into the trip itself. And this all comes down to a nice simple word, which is local. So for years, we've said, when you travel with G Adventures, we're going to travel local. And what does that mean? It means we stay in locally run accommodation rather than big chains. Sorry, Bethany, I can hear you a tiny bit. So we stay in locally run accommodation. We're going to use local transport, use local guides, and that makes sure all the money stays local. So for years we said that, and people said, "Well, that sounds great, but what have you actually got to prove that?" So we went and got some proof. So we went and pulled together what was initially called the G Local Survey, and eventually went on to become the Ripple Score. Now, the Ripple Score is a measure not of how good a trip is, but how much money stays in destination on a trip. So this actually made us accountable to a number that we would put in our website and in our brochures as well. You can see it up there, Ripple Score. And that's going to give customers and agents alike an insight into how much money is actually staying in destination. Now, the goal, of course, is to get 100. Our average is 93. There's sometimes challenges around the world where a piece of infrastructure like a train line is built by a neighboring country for many different reasons, sometimes political. So we can't always get to 100, but we are very proud that our average is 93 and we have 400 trips that are 100. So it's a measure where you can see and a customer can see just how sustainable a trip is. And of course, Ripple being that when that money stays local, it ripples out into the community rather than leaving the country. But what we did want to do, and we've done so since 2003, is, what if some of the key highlights on the trip, beyond just the accommodation and beyond the transport and the meals, what if some of the key highlights gave back too, and also not at a compromise of the trip experience? So back in 2003, when we founded Planetera, our non-profit partner, that brought about G for Good, which might happen to be one of the quiz questions if you're having a look at those. And this was a long-standing partnership with Planetera to integrate social enterprise projects into our trips. And so fast forward, 20 years, we're now got over 100 projects globally. So what does this actually mean? Well, we build these projects into the trips. So that means your customers experience them, you visit them. This is not raising money for a worthy cause and then not having it connected to the customer experience. So on the map on the left is our Backroads of Japan trip, and we're actually visiting a remote community. I'm going to try not to cry. We're going to visit a remote community where there's Japanese elders because there's quite a youth drain in Japan, with a lot of the younger people going off to Kyoto, going off to Tokyo, Osaka, and that leaves these smaller towns kind of devoid of younger people. So you find there's a lot of older people that are lonely. That affects the local economy. So what we were able to do is reroute one of our trips there and actually go and do a homestay with some Japanese elders, which I just think is lovely. I'd love someone to go and stay with my grandmother and give her, a bit of purpose as well. And great to learn about other cultures and actually see not just the bright lights of Tokyo and Kyoto and such, but to actually see the quieter locations as well. And then another quick example I've got there, where you can see it's in the map, is our reef restoration on the Great Barrier Reef as well. So most importantly, these become part of the experience. But our work with Planeterra falls into a number of pillars, and I did want to highlight a few others which are very close to my heart. So when is a transfer service more than just a transfer service? Well, it's when it provides for the livelihoods of women who, unfortunately, just due to social situations sometimes were not once accepted. So what we've done is we've worked with women on wheels, women with wheels in India, to create and work with them on a social enterprise, which is transfers. Now, at the end of the day, everyone needs to get from the airport to their accommodation. What we've done is we've worked with this local organization. They have 1,000 female taxi drivers. And I probably don't need to tell everyone on the webinar that this is not the social norm. This is not the gender norm in the country, unfortunately. So we work with them to find women which are from disadvantaged backgrounds that are interested in learning English, CPR, taking on financial independence as well. And in many cases, they go on to become the primary breadwinners in their families. So this is a simple replacement of service in one sense. Like I said, everyone needs to get from the airport to their hotel. We've just substituted it with an organization which can give back. And your customers love it as well, because they've got a nice friendly face, of course, when they arrive. Another example, which is probably more around the day tour kind of impact, is that Key Corker is a paradise in Belize for anyone that's seen it or heard of it. Nice place to visit, but it can be tough to be a child there and grow up. So beyond the age of 12, most kids were leaving the island for school. What we did is we partnered with Ocean Academy, which was the first high school on the island, and we put together bike trips by buying bikes for the kids. So that means the children can actually lead bike trips around the island, which is, again, a great experience for your customers, but it means that the money can be reinvested back into college fees or for the kids to give to their families as well. And it introduces them to tourism as well, for English and if they want to pursue a life in tourism. And then another one of the pillars is conserving cultures. So this is one of my personal favorites, opened back in 2014. It's a restaurant in the Sacred Valley on the way to Machu Picchu. So at G Adventures, we take over 10,000 people to Peru, over 10,000 people to Machu Picchu every year, at least. Now, everyone needs to eat. You got to stop somewhere. But what we do is we worked with the local community to build a restaurant a little bit off the main drag. And that meant that we could actually go and support 40 local individuals with ripple effects in that community. And this is where it becomes perfectly sustainable. Because we're bringing the customers along, it's not about helping someone open a restaurant and then hoping the customers come. Other customers can go to this restaurant, but we know that we're going to provide consistent travelers to come and visit as well. And most importantly, the cost of the meal is included in the cost of our trip. So we're also not, rolling up in a restaurant and hoping people spend some money to benefit the community. And I just love that one. I've been back several times and I've seen how they've expanded and built on it as well. And then the last point I wanted to touch on, which is quite a lofty goal in a minute and a half, is just the subject around to fly or not to fly. Because I think this is important to note. If the short-term benefits of stopping flying, of course, we reduce all our carbon all our carbon emissions, as we found during the pandemic. However, as we all found during the pandemic, when we couldn't fly and we couldn't travel, we were, of course, upset about that. But what really had an impact was around the world and all those communities that rely on tourism as their source of income. So if someone's not coming and staying in your restaurant, they're not buying your souvenirs, that's your primary source of income. And if we were to reduce travel to the point where that became a financial burden for people, then unfortunately, if you need to feed your family, you may resort to destroying the forest that's near you or poaching. So there are tourism incentives around the world to protect those natural wonders, because that's why the customers come. But of course, if we stopped all the travel or reduced it to a significant amount, then it may be that people would resort to that. So I don't believe the answer is not to fly. Certainly, we can have more efficient aircraft. We can offset our carbon, but travel is the greatest form of wealth distribution in the world, and that's why we need to continue traveling. And boom, that's 10 minutes. There you go. I would love to know if anyone had any questions. You're being too kind to me. Where's my hard questions? Oh,
Oh, hello. I'm
hello.
back. Hi. We only have 1 minute left. I just wanted to ask how you can support agents in using these sorts of projects and products and concepts in their marketing. Do you have images and social media collateral that they can use to really talk about some of these great experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So our image library, to give it a little plug, it's at brand.gadventures.com. There's over 8,000 images there, including images from our social enterprise projects. The images I used today were from there. Thank you for dropping that in. It takes about 24 hours for marketing to approve a sign up, but then you've got all those resources to go and use yourself. Also on Planetara's website itself, it tells you about the impact. And then, as I mentioned, on our website, you'll actually see the Ripple score is pinned to every single trip as well. Right. So if you've got people that do ask, look, what impact is this trip gonna have? You can see it right there in a numerical value. I see someone's asked how we train our guides around sustainability. I'm not privy to the entire training program, but I do know that it's very extensive around Planetara as well, especially, of course, if there is a project in that community, as there is in most around the world. And it becomes a key highlight, not just for the guests, but for the local guides as well. Cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Thanks, Stu. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.